Years ago, when I started training dogs professionally, I had a fellow to put a dog in training with me, and he disclosed all the dog's strengths and weaknesses. The dog could cast and handle. In other words, if it didn't see a bird go down, he would take basic whistle and hand signals and verbal commands to get to that bird. It had been with a trainer, I think, 5 months in the first year and another 5 months in its second year. But the problem the owner was having with the dog would not come back in unless it had a bird in its mouth. Duck, pheasant, quail, you get the idea. And he said that one of the things he wanted to correct was because his wife liked to take the dog for a walk, and there were times that they had some property, she would let the dog off lead and let it run around. Well, it wouldn't come back, and she was having to take bumpers with her and throw it so the dog would see it. As soon as the dog would get it and come back with the bumper, they'd take it and put the lead on him real quick so he wouldn't run back off again. So I was greatly appreciative of the fellow disclosing the strengths and weaknesses of the dog, and I took the dog in. After probably about a week or so, I started seeing the issue the guy had mentioned. And the thing I had found interesting too is this part wasn't disclosed. If the dog was out 150 to 200 yards, a lot of times you have to blow your whistle a little bit harder, or you have to verbally ask the dog to come back in. You have to yell out here, not in a threatening or mean way, but you have to yell it out. Well, I noticed the dog would slow down and put its head down and still start hunting somewhat methodically in the area of where it thought the bird was at, but the dog's demeanor would change. So after a couple of times of trying to get the dog to come back in, I would just take and just walk out to the dog. Well, when I got out there, every time as my distance to the dog got closer, the more the dog seemed to get nervous. And then when I got real close to the dog literally sat down and was looking at the ground. He put his head down. So I would take a knee, pet the dog, put the lead on the dog, and walked it all the way back to the truck and trailer, in which I was using at the time to get the dogs in and out to the field. This happened a couple more times, and instead of going further with the dog's training or trying to force it to do anything, I was kind of like, I need to get in touch with the owner and see what's going on a little bit more. A phone call later, it took a little bit, but I found out what the trainer the fellow was using before told him that if the dog was not listening out in the field, by all means walk out there and discipline the dog by any means necessary. That was totally wrong. So that dog had it in his mind. He had been conditioned actually that when he heard the command really loud, or you started walking out to him in the field instead of him returning to you, that was a bad thing and he was fixing to get corrected. So after a little bit of time, so what I did with the dog is, and I told the owner that I was going to go back to the fundamentals for a month, back into the yard of working on recall. Because the thing about recall is not about control, okay? It's about trust. That dog has to understand that when you're calling it, it's not because you want to be in control, it's because you're asking it to come back to you, sometimes for safety reasons. Now, like the dog that I just mentioned, a lot of times when it comes to recall, people make a mistake of trying to force a dog, or they get frustrated and they start creating an environment of where a dog understands that recall is a bad thing. They don't understand the word. Sometimes it can even be the tone in your voice, or it could be your body language the dog reads off of that causes that command, that verbalization, to be something very negative. Always remember, when you're working with your dog and you're working on recall, what I do, my rule of thumb is I ask the dog to do it the first time. The second time, I assist the dog in doing it. In other words, if the dog is not doing it, I go out with a lead, whether it's a slip lead I have in my pocket or the hunting lead, the Jaeger lead I have around my chest that I use a lot of times, or I'll literally take the 35-foot long check cord that I have, go out, put it on the dog, and gently pull them in. I want them to understand recall is a good thing. They've got to come back. So be mindful of your tone and your body language, and especially how many times you're asking a dog to do something. Do you realize that what we're doing with the dog and how we talk, our body language, it parallels to God's call in our own life? God doesn't force us to do anything. He invites us to do stuff. He invites us to be a part of His work. He invites us to be a part of His ministry. And our willingness to come to the Lord and to obey and to listen is very much like a dog. It conveys trust. When you are following what the Lord is asking you to do, that is conveying to Him, that's conveying to everyone else that you're involved in, that you trust the Lord. There are times myself that I've heard the voice of the Lord ask me to do something or tell me to be a part of some kind of ministry or to make a change in business or to do this, that, and the other. And unfortunately, I put it off or I just ignored it. And it didn't take long for me to understand why I was having so much resistance and so many issues. It was simply because I was not listening to His voice. Once I yielded to His voice and started listening to Him and doing things the Lord's way, things were better. My relationship with Him was better. So back to your dog. If you want to have a good relationship with your dog, you've got to build trust. You have to correctly teach them, but yet do it in a way of the dog feeling that trust, that care, that love, that relationship. I have a challenge for you. As we're working with our dogs and we're asking them to respond and respect our voice and to trust us, I want you to take and train yourself to hear and to respond to the right voice. That right voice is the Lord's voice. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, follow, and if you would in the comments, share your experiences of dog training, but also your experience in following the Lord and your lessons in faith. I'm Todd Harvey, and this is The Disciplined Way. Thank you for watching.